Welcome to Permission to Thrive. I'm your host, Suzi Lula. As a spiritual therapist for over 20 years, I have the honor and privilege of ushering women and mothers just like you on a journey from simply surviving to powerfully thriving. I also have the honor of raising our son, Will, who is now a young adult, with my longtime partner, Jami. So I'm right there on the journey with you. Consider this your personal sanctuary, your space to meet your heart, embrace your messy, and come home to your most authentic, extraordinary self. My hope is that you leave resourced and inspired because you are here to shine. Welcome to Permission to Thrive. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Permission to Thrive. Today, I'm going to be doing a personal peek into my life, part 2. So a few episodes ago, I believe it was episode 52, I was interviewed for our 1-year anniversary by my colleague, my dear friend, Joe Argazzi. And we did like a peek into my life behind the scenes around the creation of the podcast. And I received so many emails and DMs and comments from you all asking some more personal questions that I thought I would dedicate an entire episode to answering your questions about my personal life. And as I said in the interview with Joe, really in my life, I have come to a place where nothing is off limits. Nothing is out of bounds. So I'm going to address 3 questions, and they are about 3 different areas of my personal life. So sit back, relax, and imagine that you're at my home and we're having tea together. So maybe get yourself a cup of tea, a journal, but you're sitting, we're together, we're relaxing, and I'm just giving you a peek into my personal life, not to give you so much about my personal life, but in sharing my personal life to assist you with your life. So anything I'm sharing, please soak it in, take whatever works for you, leave the rest. But more than anything, as you're hearing me talk about my life, apply it to your life, apply it to your relationships, apply it to the different areas of your life, so that you leave here transformed, more inspired to jump back into your life and create the richest, most thriving life possible for you. Really happy to do this episode. It's really neat to receive questions from all of you and to, quite frankly, hear what you are interested in. So here's the first question. It's from Lauren. She says, "Dear Suzi, I'm Lauren, and I've been listening to your podcast since the beginning." So thank you very much, Lauren. "I love every episode. I listen while I'm running. You talk about the repairing that you did in your relationship with your son, Will. What was it like before, and what did you do specifically to repair it? I have a 12-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son, and I want to have a close relationship with each of them like you do with your son. Thanks so much for all that you do, and thanks for answering my question in advance." So there's nothing I love talking about more than repairing a relationship so that we can create close, connected, intimate relationships with all those with whom we love in our lives, but specifically our children, because what do parents want most? We want to feel close to our children. And what do our children want most from us? They want to feel close to us. They want to feel safe with us. They want to feel that they can trust us. What did we want most from our parents? We wanted to feel that we were seen, that we were heard, that we were valued, that someone cares about us, that we are cherished, that our life is important to someone, that our life matters to someone. So I love everything about this question. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a loyal listener. And so I think the first thing, there's so much and there's so many ways I could answer this question. But I think the first thing that I always say is that I have a very few, but very specific parenting values. I have very few, but very specific values in my life. So I start with, what do I value? And you can start with, what do you value? So the highest value I have had in raising my son Will, one value, it always comes to connection for me. I always wanted, obviously, to feel very connected to him, but more than me feeling connected to him, I always wanted him to feel connected to me. Because so often we love our children. We know how much we love our children. I know that my mom loved me to the moon and back, but I didn't often feel connected to her. So when you take as your highest value connection, or you can take perhaps being at peace is your highest parenting value. Perhaps you have 2, 3, 4. I like to keep it small enough that you can carry them in your back pocket. So when I think of connection as my highest parenting value, what I began to realize when Will was really young was that I was still carrying a lot of the generational pain that I had from my childhood because I didn't feel very connected to my mom. So I always say to parents, the first place to look, rather than looking externally to your children, look internally or look to your past, because 99% of the time, you are bringing with you baggage, unhealed, unprocessed, unmet needs from your own past, and you are bringing them and projecting them currently onto your children. That is exactly what I was doing. So first, you look to your past. You ask, what is unprocessed? What are my unmet needs from my own childhood? So when I started doing that, I looked at my conditioning. Well, my conditioning was that my own behavior was important to my mom because it gave her a sense of worth and value. So then what was I doing with my son Will early on? His behavior needed to be good because then it would make me feel like I was being a good mom, like I was worthy. His behaviors were important to me and his accomplishments were important to me. Why? Because in my own childhood, what I accomplished had me feel like I was earning the approval of my mom. And so I began to realize early on my journey as a parent that I was expecting from Will that which had been expected from me, that his behavior was a reflection of my worth and value as a mom, that his accomplishments were a reflection. His accomplishments were mirroring back what I was telling myself about my own value as a mom. And there's 2 other things I really realized. I looked for outer validation. I looked to his teachers to validate me on my parenting journey because I had unhealed, unprocessed from my past. I was still looking for my mom's approval. And then lastly, what I learned early on, and I'm so glad I learned this, I was continually asking myself, I was preoccupied with whether I was a good mom. And I realized early on that that is the most ineffective question to ask. Because when you ask if you are a good mom, you will always be on a roller coaster. If your child behaves well, if they're doing well, if they're not having challenges, you're going to feel better than if they're going through a challenge. If someone's bullying them, if they're having a hard time in math, if they're having a hard time in a relationship, if they're having challenges, you're always going to be on this roller coaster of whether you are a good mom today or a not good, a bad mom. You're going to feel guilty on the days when you are imperfect. And so I learned early on that that was a really ineffective question. And I began to ask myself, do I like the mom I'm being? Do I like the way I'm showing up? And if not, how can I fulfill my own unmet needs so that I like the mom that I'm showing up as because, quite frankly, in Will's young life, I didn't always love the way I was showing up. I was impatient. I was frustrated. That is because I, within myself, was not giving myself permission to fulfill myself first so that I would come to Will from a place of an overflow. And I know that this can be challenging, especially when we have children under the age of 6. It is challenging to show up in a fulfilled way when our child or children need so much from us. But I promise you, like I'm sitting here, giving myself permission to care for myself, to recognize I'm a soul, just like he's a soul. And if I seek to be connected and patient with him, then I need to fill myself. I need to be fulfilled from the inside out. And so I started giving myself what back then I called indulgences, luxuries. Our culture teaches us that if we take care of ourselves as parents, especially when our children are young, that it is selfish. This was the turning point for me. I began to realize, what is it that I need to feel fulfilled from the inside out, especially because in the earlier years, we're all sleep deprived. And so it's impossible to ask for sleep when our children are still developmentally too young to sleep through the night. So they're often crawling in bed with us. They're waking up in the middle of the night. There's nothing like sleep deprivation to have you show up as impatient and frustrated and overwhelmed and exhausted. And so I began to realize that because I was experiencing those states, I needed to do the things that I could do to fulfill myself from the inside out, to connect. Most of those things are free, by the way, and most of those things don't cost extra money, by the way. We think they're going to cost more because that's what culture tells us, and we think it's going to take a lot of time because that's what culture tells us. So the first thing that I did in giving myself permission to care for my soul was to begin to discern what are those generational patterns that I was speaking of, and who is Suzi authentically as a mom? Who did I want to be authentically as a mom? This question, to discern what you're bringing, the baggage from your past, and discerning it from what is authentically encoded within you. There is a parent within each one of you, and your authentic way of parenting may not look like mine. Your values may be different from mine, but I promise you there's an authentic being within you that knows exactly the parent that you want to be in the way you want to parent. Now, yes, you are going to bump up against the loyalties that you still have to needing to parent like your parents will approve of you around, or the way culture will approve of you around. For instance, if like we sent Will to a Waldorf school and parents would show up with, baked from scratch, vegan, cupcakes, I needed to give myself permission to show up in the authentic way that worked for me in my life, because I was also a working mom. So I needed to give myself permission to show up authentically as me. My son is in college now, but I'm thinking back to those early years, and I'm smiling now because I'm thinking of certain parents, and some of you are probably listening. Please email me if this is you. And cooking and baking, it was your wheelhouse. It was your delight. Like, you took delight in bringing those homemade cupcakes, those homemade and baked goods to our picnics and to our different outings, right? That was not me. And so I had to go through an inner process of recognizing that I had different gifts to bring to my son and to the class. I had different gifts. I was a room mom because I'm really great at organizing, and I could organize our field trips really easily. I could help the teacher really easily. That was more of my zone. It came really easily to me. But I worked, and so baking, I didn't take or have or enjoy that process. But I had to know that I didn't need to contort myself to fit in to this community in a way that would abandon who I was authentically. Do you understand? Because if I was abandoning who I am authentically, I would bake those cupcakes, but I would end up being resentful and being impatient with Will. And trust me, I baked a lot of cupcakes, and he ended up on the receiving end of my impatience. So you have to really take the time to become introspective about the kind of parent that you are, and then come to peace with that and bring that parent. I have a mantra for when Will was little, and it was just, I'm just not that kind of parent. I've been working in one of my classes there was a mom, and she took her son camping for the very first time. And it also just made me laugh and smile because I have such a deep bow for her, because I just wasn't a camping mom. But my son, I have a son, and he loved camping. And so he ended up going on camping trips with other families. That's just the transparent truth of it. And he had amazing times. And he had better times than he would have had with me, because I'm just not a camper. And I had to come to peace with that. That was great. He had amazing experiences with other families. And the way I could do camping was in our backyard. So we would call it backyard camping. And I'd bring our big quilts and blankets and our dogs and our dinners, and we would be in the backyard almost all summer. We would camp out in our backyard. That is the way I found to be the authentic mom that I was here to be. But as much as liking the authentic parent that you are here to be, you also need to make peace that it's going to bump up against the way that society and culture tells you you're supposed to be as a parent. And when you make peace with the authentic parent that you are, and you like the parent that you are, and you come to peace with the way you parent and the things that are important to you, I promise you, you will become more patient. You will be more fulfilled. You will be less overwhelmed. You will be less exhausted, because you're parenting in a way that aligns with your soul and who you are. And when you are in alignment, what you're going to create in the atmosphere and the environment for your children is a parent who likes themselves. And when you like yourself, you are relaxed. And when your children grow up in an environment where their parent is relaxed, what happens? You create safety. They feel safe. They feel that they can relax. They emotionally regulate to your emotional regulation. When you are in inner coherence, when you are in inner alignment, your nervous system relaxes. When your nervous system relaxes, their nervous system relaxes. So from early on, I really explored. It didn't take any extra time. It could be when I'm driving him after I drop him off at a play date, or after I drop him off at school, or when I'm making dinner, when I'm folding the laundry. It doesn't need to take a lot of extra time. But I gave contemplation and introspection time to who am I authentically, even and especially when it doesn't really mirror what culture tells me about the way that I should be parenting or showing up. And then what happens is other parents come and they want your relaxation. They want your secret. They'll ask you, what are you doing? And it is giving each one of our parents the permission to parent and be connected to the soul that we are. So the other things that are important to me, I would give myself time to walk in nature. That's just very important to me. I walk or hike practically every day. Yes. Did it stretch me? Yes. Did I have to reach out and ask for favors from friends? Can you watch Will? Can he stay an extra hour at the play date? Yes, it stretched my ability to ask and to become vulnerable and to hire a babysitter, even back in the day when we were on a tighter budget, but to spend that extra money investing in me. Because when I gave myself permission to invest financially in me, I showed up in a way that I liked myself. I liked the person who was showing up back in my relationship with Will. And that's why I teach courses, and I will encourage you all, invest in yourself. I keep my courses at a very low price point, but invest in yourself, because when you invest in yourself, you will like the way that you show up to your children better. So nature, music is so important to me. I mean, I listen to music all the time. Why? Because music affects your mood, and your mood affects your nervous system. And so again, I'm either listening to chants and quiet, introspective, acoustic, instrumental music, or I'm listening to like inspiring, like sing in the shower, sing out loud, dance. I used to have Will, it was a requirement every day he would have to dance with me. It didn't matter whether he was a toddler or a teen, whether he rolled his eyes or not. He just had to dance with me in the kitchen or the living room practically every day of his life, for sure in the car. We just blast music. So nature, music, the healing of my own generational patterning and energy and meeting my own unmet needs, coupled with allowing myself to live as the authentic soul that I am, what it did was it allowed so much inner healing for me. And as I healed and I recognized, oh, I don't really care about what grades he makes. I care about his love of learning. I care about his love of reading, his love of education. So my values became more clear to me. His behavior mattered less to me, and our connection and our processing about his behavior became more important to me. So the more that I healed inwardly, the more I stepped into my authenticity, the more then I was able to tweak what was really important to me in my relationship with Will. So the love of education, not his exact grades, the love of reading, not how many books he was reading, respect and developmentally appropriate behavior, not expecting behavior that he was incapable of or was out of his developmental reach. During that time, that is when it became evident to me that he had qualities of ADD. And then we got him tested, and I learned about the gifts of ADD and the creativity that comes along with most children that have that quote label diagnosis. Both of those words are cringeworthy words, but I learned about the brain wiring, and I learned about what affected him so that I could come in and offer the connection with him to make him feel good about the challenges that he would go through needing to fit into our constricted system. So what I'm trying to say is that the process of my relationship with him became much more important than any of the external results. The process of my relationship with him became paramount. That became more important to me than anything else. The inner versus the outer. Our relationship became more important to me than anything and everything in the outer, because I wanted to create the safety for him. When you can create safety for your children, you create trust. When they feel safe with you, they will trust you. And when they trust you, you will create a relationship that's full of the qualities of well-being and connection. It doesn't mean that you won't go through challenges. It doesn't mean that your children won't go through challenges, but I liken it to a savings account. The more safety that I can create with him, every time it's like putting money into a savings account. And then when we do go through challenges and differences, or he goes through a challenging period, or I go through a challenging period, we have a savings account that we've been depositing into. And when we go through challenges, that foundation, that savings account is there, it's present, it's rich, and we can take some, it's rich, it's there for him, it's there for me, it's there for us. So I hope that that answers your question. Just to recap, first thing is to become aware of what you value in your parenting with your child. What are your values? One value, two values. And then you begin to become aware, what am I bringing in from my past that are unmet childhood needs that are getting in the way of those values? And you begin to heal the baggage that you are bringing in. You begin to learn how to meet your own unmet needs. And then you ask yourself, who am I authentically? Who is the parent authentically? What is my authentic soul and the way that I want to be and create a relationship with my children from my authentic soul, from my innocence, from my soul self, and not my conditioned self? And then as you begin to heal, you will begin to become aware of what are the things that are important to you, both in caring for your own soul so that you are fulfilled and have an overflow, and so that you are fulfilled in your relationship with your child, so that the process of your relationship becomes filled with safety and trust and a relaxation where you are both able to be fully yourselves. So I hope that's helpful. I love the question. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to the next question, number 2. Hi, Suzi. My name is Rebecca, and I love your podcast. I always feel so soothed and like I can do anything after listening. Even the tone of your voice is so soothing. Thank you so much for that. Are you always so peaceful? I'm trying to learn to meditate, but having such a hard time trying to be still, quote, do nothing, and trying to get my mind quiet. I'm sure you must meditate. Can you share what you do to stay so calm, centered, and peaceful? So I love this question. Thank you very much. Yes, I do meditate. I have actually meditated since I was 16 years old. I started a meditation practice. The first practice I learned was Transcendental Meditation, TM, and I found it during a time of extreme darkness and angst in my own life. I was 16. I had won a big scholarship to go study in Switzerland. I'm from the States. And I was in this new country feeling like I was a very small speck in a very big country. And I had brought with me a lot of childhood angst and feelings of loneliness and not enoughness and just chaos and turmoil and darkness from my own childhood and my own family of origin. And I was always seeking, I know this could be different. I knew there was a different possibility. I knew there was a different potential in my house. We just couldn't manifest it. We just didn't know how to really create the possibility that was there as a family. And I was always searching for what was possible. And so I did. I learned to meditate. And I think why TM was the perfect introduction to meditation for me is because when you learn TM, you are given a mantra. And so it's a Sanskrit word that you don't even know the meaning of, but it helps your mind go back to this one mantra. So if you haven't studied TM, you can take any mantra. I could use something like, I am at peace. I am at peace in my body. I am at peace in my body. I am at peace in my mind. My soul is at peace in this moment. Or you could just take one. I am at peace in my mind. My mind is at peace. And then whenever your mind wanders, you just come back to that mantra. My mind is at peace. My mind is peaceful in this moment. I am at peace in this moment. Your mind will wander, you come back. Your mind will wander, you come back. It really isn't about quieting your mind. It's about learning to come back to your heart. So I always say when I'm teaching people how to meditate, rather than trying to quiet your mind, focus on coming home to your heart, coming home to your heart, because your mind is always active, but often your heart is very peaceful. So I come home to my heart. If you have a hard time, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, I always have flowers around me. You could just take a flower and just stare at this flower. And whenever your mind wanders, you just come back to the beauty of the flower. My nature is the same nature as this beautiful flower. I can smell it. The scent is so beautiful. It could be something that simple. So when I talk about meditation and teach meditation to my clients and my students, there's a few things that I say to them. First of all, don't worry so much about quieting the mind. Just center in your heart. Use music. Before you formally meditate, play a piece of beautiful music. That will also help bring you from your mind into your heart. So I often, especially at the beginning or when people are first learning to meditate, begin with a song or a piece of music, instrumental, song, doesn't matter. Anything that will bring you into your heart. You could do the same with just a very short inspirational reading, a Mary Oliver poem, something that's inspirational to you, a paragraph from my book, The Motherhood Evolution. I wrote that book so that you could open that book to any page and put your finger on any paragraph, and it would be nurturing. It would be nourishing, because parents are busy and we're often in our head or we're in our physical life doing activity after activity. So I wanted the book to be very soothing. So you can just read something inspirational before you close your eyes. And then the last thing is to start small and to leave your meditation practice before you start looking at the clock. So if ideally you'd like to meditate for 10 minutes, I would say set your timer, stop after 5 minutes. If you want to meditate for 20 minutes, stop after 5 minutes, then stop after 8 minutes. Build up slowly so that you create in your nervous system a great relationship with meditation, so that you look forward to sitting down. You look forward to listening to a piece of music, looking at a beautiful flower, reading something inspirational. It should be a practice that draws you to it, almost like a luxurious time for yourself. So you create a space that is inviting. And then as you get into the practice, you don't need anything. You just sit still. Sometimes I still put my hand on my heart, and I'm simply now, because I've done so much Vipassana meditation, now I just feel the breath going in through my nostrils, back through the back of my throat and into my heart. And I just focus on the inhalation, the exhalation, and the feeling of peace in my heart. And then at the end of every meditation, I always give that peace out to those whom I love, my son, my husband, all my clients, my students, my friends, and to everyone on planet Earth. Like I would send it to Palestine, Israel, the Gaza, the Ukraine, Russia, any places on Earth right now, and any people on Earth that are suffering, that feel unrest, that are in pain, a mom who lost a child who lost a parent. I always offer it out before I open my eyes. I do meditate twice a day, every day. I'm just a geek that way. It calms me. It assists me to stay in a relaxed state. I never look at the clock anymore. Typically it's probably around 50 minutes, but you also have to understand I have a son who's in college now. So I have a lot more time. When he was 4, 5, 6, he would literally come into the room and climb all over me and ask me 100 times, when are you going to be done? When are you going to be done meditating, Mom? And he's literally climbing all over me. And that's fine. It was fine with me because I wanted to model to him that it was simply about taking the time to be in my chair, create some peace, get up, leave. It could be 3 minutes, 2 minutes. I wanted to model to him that he would just see me caring for myself. So that is part of, you asked specifically about meditation. So that is specifically about my meditation practice, but I have lots of spiritual practices. And I believe for any of you who are painters, you have a wide palette. A painter doesn't often only paint with black or white. A painter paints with many different colors, from fuchsia to pinks to blues to vibrant blues, all different colors and hues of those colors. The painter has a wide palette of colors, and I like to have a wide palette of spiritual practices. So some of my spiritual practices include walking in nature and being in the silence. Sometimes I take an entire day in the silence, or a few hours in the silence. Or as I've shared, I listen to music. Music feeds us, it calms us, it soothes us, it affects us. So I'm very specific about the type of music that I'm listening to depending on what mood I'm seeking. I'm a journaler, so I like to journal. I love writing letters to my younger self. I love writing letters from my wise 80-year-old self. That's what each one of you could do right now, is you could sit down and write a letter to yourself from your 80-year-old self. These practices are so life enhancing. So flowers, nature, letters to yourself. I practice yoga. Anything that is going to transport you from your small self to your soul self. So just ask yourself right now, what would most transport me from my small self to my soul self? And whatever that is, just begin to start small, one small thing by one small thing. You can build. When you find the things that authentically feed your soul, when you enrich your soul, you enrich your relationships with everyone around you. So thank you, Rebecca, for that question. Really great question. There's so much more I could say about it, and probably will on future episodes, because my spiritual practice is really the heart of my entire life. So expect many more episodes on that, but I was seeking to keep it succinct enough to give you some real practical, tangible takeaways for today. And for those of you who have already a very rich spiritual practice, I hope that some of this inspired you and gave you some takeaways to maybe reinvigorate your practice, so that your spiritual practice can be at the heart of your life as well. So last question, great question. Question number 3. Hi, Suzi. My name is Dominic. I'm 44 years old and I've been married for 20 years. My wife and I are having some challenges, and you seem to have such a great relationship with your husband. Has it always been like that? What is your secret? I love the episodes with the two of you on and getting to hear both of your perspectives. Thank you so much in advance. Yes, Dominic, I have also been in a long-term relationship, 26 years, this coming up June 9th. Again, as I've been sharing with the other 2 questions, I try to keep it really simple. I have a few core values. For me, it always seems to come back to what is it that I really value in life. When I get to the end of my life, I'm going to look back. It's going to have been my life. Did I live it in a way that I was true to myself? So I have just a few simple core values where relationship is concerned. Clearly, you guys are getting to know me. connection is my number one value. Connection with Jami, connection with Will, but most importantly, first and foremost, connection with myself. So connection with myself is my biggest relationship value, because what I know is that when I am connected to myself, I am more likely going to be able to relate to him with equanimity and compassion and an open heart. And certainly it isn't always like that. To answer your question, certainly we've gone through many, many, many different challenges and ideations in our relationship, which I will get to in a moment. But connection within myself so that I can come into my relationship as open-hearted, as communicative as possible, so that we are creating as much as possible that savings account of deposits. And I think the other real big value in our relationship is simple friendship. I cannot stress that enough. I say it all the time that for me, being in like with a person is often so much more powerful than being in love with a person. Because of course I love my husband. 26 years, I love him. Liking him is a different level of connection. I love myself. Liking how I show up in my relationship is an entirely different animal. And so I seek to like the way that I show up. And if I'm not liking the way that I'm showing up, then I need to go back, become contemplative, introspective, look at what is it that's keeping me from showing up as the individual that I'm seeking to show up as. So first value would be connection. Second value is friendship, liking myself in the relationship, liking the person I'm with. And the third thing would be that I really believe that creating a healthy relationship that is full of the energy of well-being comes from my willingness to clean up my side of the street. That 98% of the work of the relationship is cleaning up my side of the street. 98% of the relationship for Jami is cleaning up his side of the street. So remember, a relationship is the weaving together of two individuals. So in the relationship, there's three energies. There's my energy, there's Jami's energy, and then there's the energy of the coming together of both of us. And so to the best of my ability, when I learn to go back and keep my side of the street clean, then what I'm bringing into the relationship is clean. Not always easy, just a caveat. When Jami, to the best of his ability, and this is not about perfection, it's all about imperfection, but when he's committed to cleaning up his side of the street, then what he's going to bring in is clean. And then where we come together as the entity of the relationship, it will be more clean than toxic. So what does that look like in a relationship? Like, what does that look like in a tangible, practical way? Because of course, to your point, if you and your wife are having challenges, and I say challenges can really be a gift in a relationship. When we are challenged, that is the relationship seeking to get our attention. Something is amiss. We've gone off course. We're out of inner alignment. And it's a message, it's a prompting, it's a wake-up call to get ourselves in alignment within ourselves, and then to bring the relationship of the partnership back into an alignment. But it always starts within each one of us. A relationship is an external connection, partnership between two people, but it's our inner life that I'm bringing, my inner energy that I'm bringing, his inner energy that he is bringing. And so often, yes, we go through challenges. It can get messy. It's about learning how to clean up your own messy And I'll speak to that in a moment. But the last thing that I want to say, just to your point of you're going through challenges, certainly Jami and I have gone through challenges. I think that it's very important in relationships that every so often, it's like chapters of a book. You get to the end of a page and there's a new chapter. Well, it's often important that one chapter dies away before another chapter can be birthed. And so I believe that incrementally during relationships, it's important to allow the old to die away, to come together with your partner and say, look, we have been through XYZ. Let's bring this chapter to completion. So I'll give you a couple of real examples. So Jami has said to me in the past, let's say, especially let's say when we would be talking about finances, he would say to me, one of the reasons I don't like sitting down with you around finances is because you bring in all of the past into the time that we're talking about finances. So we're not just talking about our current financial situation. You're bringing in like last week, last year, last month, and that was not working for him. So that was accurate. There was a chapter of our relationship where I was bringing that in. Why? Because I was bringing in some energy from my past, unmet needs from my past that I was expecting him to meet. I was bringing in things that I hadn't processed in our relationship. So I took the time to really go back, meet my own unmet needs, and then also get very clear so that if there was unfinished business that I had that was legit, that I would bring it up in a time that was safe and that was appropriate. So both things can be happening. I can learn that when we're in a, let's say, a financial meeting together, to stay in the present, but it doesn't have to be to the detriment of completing some things from the past. I just needed to find a safe, appropriate time and space to do that. And so when I did each of those things, now we come together and we say, look, I want you to know that I'm not that person anymore. I want you to see that I'm not bringing in all of the old toxicity anymore. Can we complete that chapter? Can that die away so that you see me as the partner that I am today and not the partner that I was a month ago, a year ago, because I was that partner. I was imperfect. That is accurate. I brought that in, but that's not what I'm doing anymore. And so part of staying current in your relationship, healing whatever has happened in the past, allowing yourselves to be who you are in the present is consciously speaking to allowing the past to be complete, allow it to die away, so that when you do come together, you're coming together clean. You're coming together with who you are today. Now, with that said, it's a real practice to learn how to understand what I'm bringing into the relationship that's mine, and to discern that from what the other person is bringing into the relationship that is theirs. I call that knots in consciousness. So if I'm bringing in something from my past, I'm bringing in a knot into the relationship. And if he's bringing in something, he's bringing in a knot. So then what happens is we need to learn how to untangle our own knots. And if you're needing to do some of that, please, I have courses. I have a course called Transform Yourself. I have a course called Transform Your Relationships, a course called Transform Your Spiritual Practice. But grab one of those courses. They're inexpensive, because what I teach and what you need to learn is how to observe not your partner, but how to observe within you what is yours that you are bringing in to the relationship, and to always have the eyes to see, oh, what I'm bringing in represents my own unmet childhood needs. And then you learn to ask yourself, oh, what is it that you so needed that you did not receive, that you're still trying to get met through your partner, how can I meet my own unmet need? And when you learn to meet your own unmet needs, everything about your relationship will change. Now, there will come an action step. I needed to learn how to speak in a conscious way that communicates, like I learned from my family of origin, how to communicate in a very passive aggressive way. I learned from my family of origin how to communicate in a very martyred way. I learned how to try to induce guilt into the other person. So I learned some very dysfunctional forms of communication. When I learned to meet my own unmet childhood needs, to see myself, to value myself, to communicate to myself in a way that was dignified and respectful, I still then needed to learn how to communicate with Jami in a more adult, conscious way. So I needed to learn to express to him. I needed to learn how to ask for what I needed. I needed to learn that I was worthy of asking for what I needed. I needed to learn that I was worthy of having needs. We all have needs, and I needed to learn that I was worthy to ask for support and not try to do everything on my own. I needed to learn how to ask for those things in a way that was respectful, in a way that was healthy, in a way that was functional, in a way that had clean energy, in a way that asked for what I needed without expecting anything from the other person. So it can be layered. There's many skills, there's many practices. But the biggest thing that I can share with you, Dominic, is, and everyone listening, obviously, is when you really take ownership that I will, to the best of my ability, take ownership from my side of the street, so much of the toxicity of a relationship will dissipate. And I always say this, our children, our partners, our friendships, our bosses, no one is looking for us to be perfect. You are allowed to be imperfect, but our children, our spouses, they see when we're trying. They see when we're learning to evolve. They see when we're taking ownership for our side of the street. When I take ownership for the part that I'm bringing into the relationship, what happens? The other person typically softens themselves because I'm not coming into the relationship pointing my finger, looking externally at what my partner is or isn't doing. It's very disarming when I come in and I say, this was my part. I recognize my part. Typically, when I come in and I'm offering what is mine and what I've learned about myself, it really allows the other person to soften. So a takeaway question that you can ask yourself is, what am I learning about this interaction with my spouse? What am I learning about this chapter of our life? What am I learning about myself in this relationship right now? And if you ask yourself as a habitual practice, what am I learning about myself in this relationship right now? It brings the mirror, it brings the spotlight back on you. It brings the spotlight away from the other person, and it brings the spotlight back on you. And when you can ask yourself, what am I learning in this situation, in this experience about myself with this other person? And then you go and you communicate it to the other person, what's going to happen? The other person is very likely going to be wondering, oh, well, what am I learning about myself in this situation? And most often, and more often than not, they will offer up and they will soften and they will become contemplative and introspective and come back to you at some point and go, wow, I really realized, well, I was doing XYZ. So simply asking yourself, what am I learning about myself in this situation is a gateway to repairing, to creating connection, to creating deeper intimacy, and to creating those deposits in the savings account of what does work in the health and well-being of your relationship. When we do this enough, often what we begin to see is, oh, I was not only bringing in my childhood unmet needs, but I can look at my partner and I can see, oh, they are acting out from their unmet childhood needs. So for instance, with me, in our financial conversations, I was bringing in the past because I had a lot of unmet childhood financial needs. I felt very in survival mode financially when I was a little girl. And so I would be groping for Jami to meet my own feelings of insecurity. I was in survival mode, like a trauma response survival mode. And so I was really pulling upon him. And when I learned, oh, those are my unmet, I went through some financial trauma when I was young. Oh, let me heal. I could start looking at myself. Oh, I'm showing up in this adult body, but I'm really a little scared girl about my financial survival in this financial conversation with this other adult. I was like a little girl in an adult body. And when I learned how to take care of my own financial survival system, I could show up then differently. And that I could share with him, now I'm showing up differently. Now, vice versa, it also works that now when I see Jami reactive in our relationship, more often than not, I can look at him from my heart and go, oh, I see a scared little boy. I see a little boy who has unmet needs, and he's just trying to get those needs met in a very awkward way, in a way that really isn't going to satisfy or sustain him. So I don't engage anymore to the degree that I can see, oh, he's a scared little boy. So within any two people, whether it's parent, child, spouse, at any given moment, I'm going to show up in this adult body, but in any given moment, there could be a little girl within me or a little boy within him trying to get their needs met from the other person rather than knowing how to get them met within yourself. So once you really start that practice, you will literally be able to see your wife, and all of you listening, your spouse, your significant other, your child, your boss, your friend, your mother-in-law, as a hurt little child. And that's why is the saying, hurt people hurt people. But when you can see them through the eyes of compassion, you will better able not to get reactive and to show up in a calm, compassionate way. So I hope that some of these, again, same with the other questions, we could have an entire episode and a series of episodes on creating healthy relationships. And certainly I will do more and more. Maybe I'll have one episode on each one of these three. But I was more giving you a peek into my personal relationship. But some takeaways around relationships. Number one, have a few core relationship values that mean something to you. And then ask yourself to be accountable and show up true to the values that are important to you. Secondly, can you like your partner? Find the friendship. Find what brought you together in the first place. Find your commonalities. Spend some time just being together. Play some games. Go walk in nature. Go to a movie. Have dinner together. Move out of the environment where the stressors are and get to know your friend again. Become in like. Forget about being in love right now. Just be in like. with your friend. I know that could be a whole different thing as far as we're just roommates, but it can often just be a first step, because when you're not in like, you're going to have a hard time being in love. You can love someone without liking someone, but when you like someone, you are paving the path for it to be in love. Remember that you, as well as your spouse, are bringing in unmet needs from your past. And so take time to clean your side of the street. Learn how to meet your own unmet needs. Look at my course bundle, Transform Your Relationships. There's one called The Undefended Heart, one called Intimacy and Deep Connection. So I have some specifically about relationships. I have some courses about transforming yourself, healing the heart of your own inner child, learning the language of self-compassion, finding your own sense of worth. So look up some of those courses, and then let some of the chapters of your relationship die away so that there's spaciousness for you to birth your new chapter. Bring in appreciation, bring in acknowledgments, create a savings account, deposit these appreciations, what you like about the other person, what is working in your relationship, so that you build up a savings account so that when you go through the challenging times, you have something to draw upon, a strong foundation. So thank you, Dominic. And I hope that everyone listening, from getting a peek into my marriage, is giving you some inspiration, some ideas to bring back into your life, to try, to experiment, to enrich your life from the inside out, so that your outer relationships can be enriched, can be valuable, can feel connected and intimate and rich. So I hope you all have many takeaways. If you do, I would just ask you to take a moment. Please subscribe, leave a review. It really helps tremendously. Have a great week. Give yourself permission to thrive this week with your children, in your spiritual practice, in your relationships, and I will see you again next week. Much love, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If there was something in this conversation that spoke to you, we'd so appreciate it if you would take the time to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share this episode with women and mothers you know, because you are here to thrive. See you next time.